record on this computer. Boom. Now we're in business. Okay, so at the bottom of your screen, you have a poll. Make sure you fill it out. We'll get back to that right before we go to the Q&As. Speaking of Q&A, so welcome to the second member town hall. I will be your host, Matt Miller. Great to be with y'all, and great to see so many of you on this call. Part of the process here is I'm going to just kind of walk through just a little quick presentation, different pieces that we've had going on, key pieces of information that are fitting for membership. But along the way, if a question arises or something comes up in your mind, you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and post it in the Q&A section. Again, a little box at the bottom of the Zoom call here. Go ahead and post it, post your question there, and then I'll get to those questions at the end. And they can be about everything from any of the slides I'll be talking from, or of course, from anything else you've had on your mind or thoughts or ideas. You guys can actually, I believe you'll be able to comment even on each other's questions along the way here. So it should be hopefully a little interactive in that front as well. If you're posting while I'm doing the presentation, unfortunately, I will not see your questions. So just know I will come back to the questions and jump on them as soon as we get moving. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm just going to pray and jump right in. Father, we are your church. Like, we belong to you. This is the Church of Jesus Christ that you purchased through your blood, and it matters to you. Like, this is your means of trying to reach a broken, lost, confused, self-reliant, and sinful world. And Lord, we want to be a part of that. And with every fiber of our being, we want to have more and more of our lives saturated with the reality that you are the King and that we're a part of your kingdom above all things. So I just pray that tonight, as we gather as members, as people who said, hey, I belong here, as well as, hey, I'm a part of this for now, I'm trying to get a sense of what RCC is about. Like, we ask, Lord, that this would actually be a time that is glorifying to you, that we would, in this strange medium, in this weird time, that we would be able to be connected to one another as we are connected through your Son. So we pray all this in the name of Christ. Amen. Hearing you all say amen as I say that. So fantastic. Smiths, glad to have you guys join us. Again, for all of you who just joined in, looks like several of y'all have just bounced in. There's a poll at the bottom, and Q&As are going to be at the bottom too. So you can just feel free to just jump on there and ask questions away. I'll come back to those in just a little bit here. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump on in. Again, this is a town hall. So this is like it's like a family meeting around the kitchen table where we talk about, hey, this is what's going on. Here's some of the pieces. It's kind of like when you're talking through, budget finances with your family or your roommates. Like, we talk about that a little bit, then we talk a little bit about what's been going on, and then we have an opportunity to be like, okay, so what are your thoughts? What are you hearing? What are you thinking? And what kind of questions you have? So that's some of what this is going to look like, and looking forward to interacting with y'all in particular in this way. But I'm going to go ahead and jump on just a few things I wanted to kind of walk you through. And so here's what you have. We're gonna slide this over, and okay, sorry, I'm clearing my screen a little bit here so I got room to see everything. Perfect. Okay, here we go. All right. So first thing I want to talk about is where we are financially. Like, what does this look like? Some of you guys have been asking that question. What does it look like? So here's where we are. Looking at the last 6 months, and we started our budget year on August 1st. So we are halfway through our budget year as a church. And as of January 31st, here's where we stand. Our budget was set for about $380,000 over this course of these last 6 months, and so far the giving to Roswell Community Church has been $377. So you can see we're just under $10,000 behind, which is a good place to be. Obviously, we'd rather be not behind, but this is actually, it's a good place. I'm going to show you a little bit more of a history of where we've been in the last 15 months to kind of get a little bit of a sense of trajectory and kind of how the last 6 months compare, if you will, to the previous months in general. So right now, this is where we stand. And before we move on to the next slide, I just want to say, like, for many, many, many of you, especially many of you on this call who've been a part of Roswell Community Church either for a long time or even for a short amount of time, like, your gifts and your contribution, your ability to see beyond even like some of the immediate concerns or fears of COVID, or what is this going to look like professionally, and have continued to be faithful and to say, hey, what Roswell Community Church is doing, not just in providing services, because that's not what we're about, but as part of trying to gather a community of people to be changed by Jesus, and to have that like leak out into every context through you all, the body, the very people of God, and to support that and to make that possible. Like, it really matters matters. And I just want to say, like, thank you for all of you who made this number. This 370,000 is individual dollars chosen by all of you over the course of this last 6 months. And it really, really matters. So I just want to say thank you and ask you to continue in your faithfulness. Let's take a look real quick though at just kind of what the last 15 months have looked like. I think it's helpful to kind of get a little bit of a span, especially since, let's be honest, the last year has been a bit of a weird year. So here's kind of a picture, and you can see the two spikes, right? Spike on the left, spike on the right. December historically in church world and is when people have particularly drawn towards generosity. People make year-end gifts. So we had a very good December, as you can see, about a little over $100,000 came in December, and that's just towards the gifts towards the church, which is awesome. If you look at kind of the numbers moving throughout, the little white numbers that you see there, the 92 at the top, the 80 at the bottom, those are the number of giving families or family units, if you will, that are giving to the church. And so we've been kind of bouncing around this 80s, this low 90s to mid 80s section for a while. We're seeing a little bit of a dip in the past few months, and so we're just trying to keep our eyes on what that looks like and what that means. We understand that some of it's maybe just like the fatigue of the time, not being connected. So if that's you and you're looking for means and opportunities to connect, like, we want to be able to do that in more significant ways. But this is just kind of a picture of what it's looked like, what the curve, if you will, has looked like for us. And so if net across the top, like we're under budget, you can just see it, right? The orange line there, that's been our budget line. So we have a couple times where we've been able to pop up above that, but otherwise we're kind of a little bit underneath that, with the exception of the large December spikes. And so the invitation, of course, is, hey, like, to continue to be faithful. Again, many of you are, and if you haven't started giving, by all means, like, this really, really matters. And we'd love you to be a part of that. So that's the financial picture. So dinner table, this is where we are financially. For the year, we're just under $10,000 behind our budget at this point. I just want to say though, like, we're doing everything we can to think strategically and to think tactically. So to think long-term about what kind of investments do we want to do. So like you probably noticed, like, there's a second angled camera that showed up a few months ago. We've been planning on that, and believe it or not, that was actually in the budget. We were planning on trying to come up with a different angle just because we recognize so many families are still at home. So that's some of what we're thinking strategically for the long-term reality of, hey, we're going to be doing online church regardless of COVID, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 years from now. So, but we're also just trying to be really wise and steward about what we're investing in, what we're not investing in during this season in particular. So anyway, that's the picture of where we are on the financial front. But one of the ways in which it's kind of on the outside of just the giving to the church has been the ways in which y'all have been, like, generous and given to in other contexts. And of course, here at Christmas time, at the Love Shares initiative, we gave over $17,300 towards She Is Safe and towards those two particular environments. That was awesome. Back in November, we did our second Give and Go. If you remember, we filled 2 full truckloads, and the folks at Must Ministries, when we arrived with those trucks, were elated. Like, they were so excited, so grateful. So there's other ways in which we're choosing to be the kind of people who give ourselves away by giving some of the things that we own and have away, because we belong to the kingdom. So that's really cool, really beautiful. We want to continue to be increasingly a generous people, not just in our church, but out from our church community. All right, so what about, like, this is kind of one of the questions I get maybe most often. It's like, all right, so what does this mean? Like, how many people are coming? From those of you who haven't been back to church, you're like, how many people are there on a Sunday morning? And then other people are like, hey, how many people are watching online? What happened? So this is kind of what we're kind of bouncing around right now. We haven't seen it's been relatively stable on the online viewing. That 85 has pretty much been consistent now for almost 9 months net over any given week. We've seen an increase in folks coming on Sunday morning, and hopefully that's because we're seeing some of the end of some of the surge piece we've had. More people are getting vaccinated, and so the opportunity here, I think, is really great to be able to have an expanded environment at RCC for more people to be able to be live in worship. And I just want to say, like, this last week, last Sunday, I got sick, real bad sick over the weekend, vomiting. Not a good weekend. And Steve Heimler, like, jumped in because he's that kind of guy. He's awesome. But I got to do my first home service, if you will, since June. And it was kind of this mixed feeling I had. I had this thought of, like, boy, I'm so glad that I get to be a part of Roswell Community Church while I'm laid out on my couch feeling awful. I was really, really grateful for that. And at the same time, I was like, man, this is not the same thing. Like I'm having to try, and I wasn't feeling great, but I'm realizing I'm having to do a certain kind of work as I'm, at home, that is not the same kind of work you have to do, or the same kind of engagement you have to do when you're live in the church. And there's different dynamics, and really some powerful ones from being in the room. So I just want to kind of issue this one thought. I thought one of the things I was curious about for y'all as you think about this is are you asking yourself the question? This is what I would ask you. Or ask yourself the question, what is it right now that's keeping us from beginning some kind of form of regularity to trying to re-enter the stream? Again, some of you haven't had vaccines yet, and you're waiting for that. Totally understand. So there's multiple reasons to not, and those are probably all very, very valid. For some though, like it's possible that like the reasons have been, well, it's just been a long time. And so my invitation is like, hey, you might just break free again and come and join and be a part of something. It's not the same. It's really not the same. So we'd love to see you. Honestly, we'd love to be able to set eyes on you. And we don't get to, I know we don't get to serve each other, serve communion. I know that's not the same. We have little cups. It's not the same, but it is significant. So anyway, so glad though that many of you are still continuing to engage and participate online. And we continue to ask you to do so, that your hearts would be reoriented to God, right? That's what we do on Sunday mornings. We reorient our hearts to the things that God's doing. So anyway, those are the means. That's kind of what we're doing, trying to stay together in the midst of this strange and unique time. So the other way we're doing that, of course, is by reading through the Bible. And it's been fascinating, by the way, to hear the feedback. We got people that text us back when we send out those texts that are like, I'm not reading, but I haven't been reading yet, but I'm coming at some point, and I'm so excited y'all are doing that. We're doing this. And for many of you, you're responding like, yeah, I actually caught up with this, or hey, I'm starting again. So that's been really, really fun. So far, you can see we have 1,200 pins that are celebrating completed Bible reading. That means 1,200 chapters, 1,200 books of the Bible have been read by people of RCC since the beginning of September. That's pretty fantastic. That's really, really exciting. So what was, I thought, one of the most ironic things is we had this big surge back when we jumped into Job. And I thought, boy, of all the books of the Bible to not have a major surge in, it would seem to be Job. And yet many of you you jumped back in or started afresh in that book. So, but that's kind of where we're at. It's been really, really fun, really meaningful as we continue to be the kind of people who become the kind of people who are grounded in God's word. So speaking of things not going the way you wanted them to, we had a silent night on Christmas Eve, right? This was the night that wasn't. I just wanted to, this is my thought. I was like, I want a picture of this, because this is, well, this is life, we spent a ton of planning time. We spent a ton of time. We had volunteers coming out, wrapping trees, laying out lights. I mean, people gave their time, energy, and it was going to be this amazing night, except for it was the worst weather, I think, of 2020 on that particular night. And I remember just thinking as we finally had to make the call that that God sees, that God sees his people. And it felt, of course, somewhat fitting for 2020 that the one thing that we were like, we're going to do something special, it's going to be fun, got completely thwarted. And I thought about the number of people who've had things thwarted this past year, from graduations to, to weddings to just work. I mean, all kinds of things. And I thought, you know what, like, the Lord is with us. Like he sees us, and he actually saw, especially all the work that people put in, like all those of you who volunteered, all of you who were planning on coming to prep to bundle, like, so I don't know what God has for us in the future. We may try this again at some point. But I'm really grateful that we're the kind of church that's going to try to do this kind of thing, that make an outdoor service at a time where, hey, you don't know if it's going to rain, sleet, snow, be frozen, and it was all those things. But we want to be those kinds of people. So it was a silent night indeed, and we trust that you did have a good Christmas Eve, regardless of that. So all right. Oh yeah, cool thing. Well, one of the things I brought up to you guys a little while ago in one of the pastoral updates, which again, if you aren't on the app, make sure you get on the app so you can get the pastoral updates. Of course, they're always on our YouTube channel as well. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. It's not highly frequented, but we do have a YouTube channel. But one of the things that shifted this past January is we shifted at the leadership on our elder board. After 11 years, I mentioned that that Brick had stepped down from the from being the chair of the elder board, and Will has stepped into that role. And it's been a really beautiful thing. I think I mentioned, I wanted to say it again. One of the things amidst all the transition of power challenges we've had in the past, couple months, it was really just a beautiful thing. Not that it's a transition of power in that big sense. I mean, we're just first amongst equals is basically how the role plays. But there's a weight and a certain responsibility that comes from the chair, and Brick's carried that for a long time with excellence and integrity and courage and all kinds of stuff. And so it's been very cool to see one just people who listen to the Lord, who say, I think it's time to transition, and for the board to come around and for us to step into a new season, especially in the midst of this time, with Will, and to realize like God's got our church and he's continuing to lead us through that. So, but also I just want you guys to always see who the elders are, that these are the men who pray for you, who think about you, who fight for you, who fight for what is good and true, who oversee the things that matter, who are seeking to live their own lives with integrity, worthy of imitation, not perfectly, of course, but worthy of imitation. So like they're good men. I just want you to be able to always lay eyes on them and be like, these guys are for us. So anyway, that's been a cool moment from a leadership standpoint. Also, we have had some new faces on the team. We had Kathleen Turner, who had been on the admin for RCC, the admin coordinator, had to step down from her role, do some family stuff. And so, though we were sad to see her go, Amanda has chosen to step in. Amanda Stone. I realized we didn't write her last name there, and I could, for the life of me, couldn't remember it for a second. So Amanda Stone has stepped in on the admin coordinator front. But one of the things that we've noticed over the years now is that the role for admin and the role for kind of the volunteer coordination, which we had previously lumped into a single role, didn't always jive super well with the temperament and the type of person that was trying to accomplish all the administrative dynamics. And so what we did is we kind of split them apart a little bit, and we invited Brian Elder, who's been at RCC and been a faithful servant, has been one of the frontline greeters and hosts for RCC for years now. And through this entire COVID season, if you haven't seen Brian out there, he's been there almost every single week. He and Leslie have been awesome. So he stepped in as kind of just overseeing that segment of the greeting, hosting, all the volunteer coordination that takes place on a Sunday morning. So we're super grateful. If you see them, encourage them, welcome them to the team. But we have amazing people at RCC, and to have them jump on and play these kind of pivot roles is really, really, really important. So so that's the staff team. Staff kind of changes. And then one of the things I just wanted to share with y'all that's been kind of going on behind the scenes, if you will. Well, actually, we wrote it down, behind the scenes. So actually going on behind the scenes is that we've been working on kind of the substructure, if you will, putting both clarity and kind of processes behind some of the things that we've either done intuitively or that we've just always done a certain way, but never always exactly sure why. And that's played itself out in a variety of different areas. We've been doing some reworking on the worship front about like, what are our philosophies? What is our philosophy, which we've had, but how does it play itself out more tangibly and more particularly? What are some of the ways in which community groups we were able to kind of think through them a little bit differently? So we're doing some rework on all those fronts. On the elder front, we're working through more and more policies and procedures. Honestly, the way in which we went through the transition from one chair to another, like we actually had a policy now to walk through that. In the past, we wouldn't have had a policy, a couple of years ago to be able to do that, both the policy and a procedure. So in some ways, it's just putting some undergirding, some footings, if you will, under the things that have been true, as well as helping us really clarify certain things that really, really matter. So that's been going on. Again, that's not like super exciting work at any moment, but it is so pivotal and has been really, really helpful along the way. So we're still in process on that. So it's not like anything's finalized but we're in process on multiple different fronts. It's been very, very cool. So, all right. What's coming up? Before we jump into Q&As, let me just talk to you a couple coming up things. Priya on Sunday told you that you were going to be doing your Ash Wednesday service from home. And she asked the question, how are you going to do an Ash Wednesday service from home? Don't we impose ashes? And the answer is yes, we do normally. But this year, we're going to invite you to do so from home. So our Ash Wednesday service is going to be an online only, and it's going to be, you can see, at 3, 6, and 8. So make sure you're going to tune in for Ash Wednesday on Ash Wednesday. But what we're going to be doing this year for Lent, as Lent begins, is we are going to be sending you a box, a kit. I actually have one of the hard copies right here, a little kit that is going to have everything you need for this Lenten season. So if you're coming on Sunday, we'll be giving you yours live. If you're not, we're going to be dropping it off at your house sometime between Sunday and hopefully Tuesday evening. So so keep a lookout for a box on your front steps or on your front door. But yeah, so we're gonna have, this thing's gonna be full of all the things you need, with a couple of little exceptions for what you need to do in Ash Wednesday service as a family, as a married couple, with your roommates or your friends, so, or even as a community. So you can, it's got the tools. You're going to have your own set of ashes in there, and I'll guide you through the process of how you're going to be able to do that together from home. So your special kit's on its way. It's going to be great. It's going to be meaningful. I believe that there's an opportunity. I think about, honestly, parents. I think this has the potential for y'all to be able to step into some of the developmental, spiritual developmental, and like meaningful moments, kind of like a permanent marker moment with your kids, that they get to ask certain questions and wrestle with certain things that they wouldn't ask if they're in the middle of a service. Or so I just want to say, like, this is a really cool moment to invite worship into your home in a thoughtful, reflective time, and then to begin Lent together with real purpose. One of the things you'll find in your Lent kit is a Lenten calendar, which is going to be an opportunity for us to, though we're distanced, to be able to be focusing on certain key things on any given day, and then to be able to share them with each other. So, so you'll come. We have a bunch of really awesome material in there, kind of guides you. You got everything you need. Little things, little containers, your own little communion. So, I mean, truly, we are trying to get you almost everything you need for the entire Lenten season, even if we can't be together to make it happen. So that's one of the things that's coming up. And the second thing that's coming up, and this is just a quick reminder, this is our first go at doing a seminar that's going to be both live and virtual. And so if you haven't had a chance to talk about it, to sign up, if you can only come for part of it, like, don't let that be a deterrent. This is a great time right now where you've been potentially more cloistered together, and as parents, if you've been focusing and trying to understand the way in which you parent, but also how you maybe team, even as couples. There's going to be a section here about how do you create the kind of relational dynamic that makes for good parenting. So it has a little bit of a marriage component to it too. So I just want to say, this is going to be worth your energy and your time. If you're going to be doing it online with us, we're creating Zoom rooms, so you'll be able to have kind of a table talk time with other folks that are online. So we're doing everything to create as much of a both live and digital community experience as we can. Really looking forward to having this time together. And again, that's going to be on the 26th and 27th, Friday night, Saturday morning. Saturday morning we have childcare, so if you want to come and bring your kids here, we'll have people to care for your kids while you are live. So that is it. So that's all of the pieces. That's all the things that are going on, things that are coming up. In some ways, there's lots of things. At the same time, we're pretty simple right now. We're not trying to boil the ocean in any particular way. So thanks for attending quite yet. I'll stop the share here and come back. So this is our moment to kind of jump into the Q&A. Before we do that, though, I am going to go ahead and end the poll. So hopefully everyone's gotten to take their poll at this point. All right. So it looks like the answer to the poll is we've had really only 2 people have had COVID. That can't be true. I know too many of you, at least I know several who've had it. But looks like we've had 2 people, 6%, who say, me, I've had COVID. I know someone in our church who's had it twice. That is pretty terrible. I mean, but 81% have not had it yet. That's terrific. Or at least you don't know if you've had it yet. It seems like there's a few of y'all who've had that. And then one family, the whole family got it. That is pretty brutal. Well, I'm just trying to imagine the days when we're not talking about COVID anymore. I know maybe none of you can quite imagine that either, but I want to go ahead and jump into some questions. So if you haven't yet, at the bottom of the screen, there's a little thing that says Q&A. Go ahead and you can drop your questions in there, and then you can also like the questions that are in there, and it pushes whatever questions you like to the top. So Okay, so let's jump in with question number one. Looks like Morgan Chuck. Looks like you have two questions. Who is that young-looking elder named Matt? Kind of look a. All right, thanks, Morgan. Really, I appreciate all the thumbs up on that. That's fantastic. It looks a little like me, shorter hair. I think that's where we're at. So I'm loving all the thumbs up. I think your real question, Morgan, was the first one you asked back at '04, which is how we doing financially? What did we cut from the budget, if anything, in response to COVID? Is our reserve fund healthy? Okay, that's a whole bunch of different questions. So let me see if I can hit a couple of them. So how are we doing financially? Overall, we're really stable. Like we are, if you remember back in 2019 timeframe, we had to make certain adjustments and shifts in light of like our reserve was getting light and low. Right now, our reserve is right around a little over 200,000, which is really, really great. So super healthy there. And so we've got some flexibility. Our goal is to always be at 3 months. And so we're just above that at this point. And then, so what do we cut from the budget? I mean, we cut a lot of for this year in particular, a lot of just some of the functional operational elements that relate to doing church live, and we kind of we've trimmed down a couple of just administrative dynamics and pieces. So so there's been some of those have probably been some of the initial cuts or whatever. We kept all of our missionary and ministry funds identically. We try to continue to take care of the staff team, and so those have been a couple of the key areas in particular. Obviously, we have a lot of what I would call fixed costs, right? Things that just kind of remain and are always the same. So we have to work with those, like our rent. Well, our rent only goes up, but it goes up incrementally. But that's always a staple. So we knew that we would spend less on utilities this year, et cetera. So we know that some of the pieces we've been able to kind of trim down to minimize expenses on that. So that's some of the pieces, again, as we said, but we also added other pieces in, some equipment elements. We have, in order to broadcast, we have certain fees associated with those pieces. So it's always has kind of a give and take. But so overall, I feel like we're stable, is what I would say. I think that's where the elders would say we're in a stable place financially at this juncture. So, all right, what other questions you got? All right, Perry. What's the max in-person attendance we'd allow on Sunday during this time? Right now, I think I may have mentioned this before, but we have 100. I'm gonna go ahead and answer this one and answer this one. Okay, great. This helps me keep it simple. I think we have a little over 129, maybe 130 seats currently positioned in the auditorium and the sanctuary. We can do 100 people on any given Sunday without even blinking. That's actually kind of where we're at right now. So that wouldn't be an issue at all with maintaining all the distancing and keeping it relatively simple. Anything over that would get a little tricky in that we'd have to do a lot of prep in between the signups to know exactly who's coming at what, in what numbers, and then try and actually preset the sanctuary in a way that accommodates that to get a whole lot beyond probably 110. So that's where it would get a little tricky, because if someone didn't sign up or something like that, it'd get really difficult to be able to, to seat people rightly and fittingly. So yeah, so that's kind of what the max is at this point. Obviously, if that became, assuming, again, seeing the curves currently on the COVID trends, they seem to be heading a pretty significant downward trajectory. So our hope, and of course, it's all of our hopes, I believe, is that as we start heading into the spring and then, into the summer, that'll continue to decline as more and more people are vaccinated. We'll be able to start thinking through maybe different ways of doing the distancing elements, et cetera. But for now, we're going to be abiding exactly as we have before until there's a fundamental shift and we can make sure everyone's going to be safe. Everyone's going to feel like they can be there without, having their mind focused on other things, which is not what we want, right? When our mind's focused on Jesus, not on whether or not if someone coughed over there, I might be getting COVID. We don't want that. So, and it is annoying. I don't like wearing a mask in church either. So it is annoying, but it is actually good and kind. So, any thoughts or plans for Easter? Great question, Mike. We're gonna have Easter. We promise that. We haven't honestly come up with anything like spectacular. We've kicked around a couple ideas, but nothing is kind of emerged as a fundamental different ideas. Honestly, we kicked around the idea of trying to do something outside again. Then we realized there's some real limitations to that in tangible and specific ways. So, but there's some, I'd say, hey, how about this? If anyone has some really great ideas about how we could do Easter in a way that would allow more people to be a part of it, et cetera, someone owns a large field with with lots of amplification and that would be fantastic. But at this point we're going to try and figure out a way. We may try and do 2 different services or something of that nature, but we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to really be able to be focused where on what Easter is about. So that's that we don't want to try and create an experience or try to have a moment that would actually take away from the purpose of what we're doing. So but anyway, hey, always, you saw that info at Roswell community at roswellchurch.org or elders at Roswell Church. Always, any ideas you have, that doesn't mean we'll do them, but hey, fire them in. If you're like, hey, I heard some other churches trying to do this, like we're not proud. We like great ideas, so we'd love to be a part of that too. So great question though, Mike. We'll let you know for sure. All right, what other questions you guys have? Have we had any, okay, so Michelle's asking, hey Michelle, have we had any new families attend online consistently since offering an online service? Do we intend to continue offering online services option long term? So it's always, honestly, it's very tricky to know if someone joins online or comes online and starts attending. I can think of 3 families that have let us know that they've been attending online, 3 to 5, somewhere in there, that have been attending online. That's about right. In the past, I would say probably in the past 5 to 6 months, that we haven't seen live in person. So our plan, absolutely. I think, the consensus, not only for us at RCC and with the elders and leadership here, but across the nation is, it is a, how do I say this? The time has passed for there to not be an online service option. There is a growing dynamic. Honestly, if you start reading some of the statistics around Gen Z and how their view of the online experience versus a live experience, there's a lot of research being done in that front right now, as you can imagine, because of what's going on. And so there's a different view. You go generationally down from boomers to Gen Z, and the experience of what it means to be live in a church service versus the comfort you have in being in an online experience, and that being just fine for you as well. Or most people like the mixed. People say they would like to have the option for a mixed experience, but that's much higher. The younger the generation, the more that the mixed experience is absolutely an agreeable thing. So from where all things are trending and heading, we will always be doing an online offering, if you will. Again, for the very reasons I just mentioned earlier. I'm laying on the couch getting to listen to Steve, and he's closing his sermon reading Romans 8, and I got tears in my eyes, and I'm thinking, yeah, if we didn't have this, I would just be sleeping probably, and so that's a really significant opportunity we have to enter into relationship with Jesus in this way. So we're really glad that we get to do this. I think the thing that we're all trying to work out, and I think that we're all going to have to be working out with the Lord, is particularly what is the wisdom around the impact of not gathering versus choosing to be at home. And what does that mean when it's just a choice? It's not born out of necessity or health, but actually, hey, listen, I think I would prefer to stay at home and worship at home. And what does that mean? And what kind of spiritual disciplines have to be built around that for that to be viable? So anyway, I hope that makes sense. That's kind of where we're at. But yeah, long term, there will always be live at RCC. And I just want to say, this is something that's come up in a couple different contexts, and that it is the scrutiny that comes from watching an online service, and even the kinds of muscles that your brain uses to watch an online service, and whether it's the potential distractions, even the sense of the critique of whether it's music or vocals or, how someone, it's just a different dynamic than when you're in the room. And so I just want to say, one, it is the online experience is an unforgiving one for performers. And for those of anyone who's watched The Voice or any of those things, you probably realize that it can be really unforgiving. And so I just want to say, like, I've heard some micro, critiques, etc. And it's like, it's really, really challenging. We have a lot of really, really talented people who are giving their gifts and offering themselves in both areas of worship and announcements, etc. And it's like, it's just tough. It's actually a totally different dynamic. And so anyway, I guess I'm asking for a ton of grace for people, as you realize it's coming across a little different. The mix is different. It's not full. When you're in the room, things are full and you're not hearing all the particulars, the specifics. And so anyway, lots of grace is what I would invite all of us to be doing, especially with those of us who are primarily experiencing the service online. It's a big deal. So anyway, thanks, Michelle, for your question. All right. Morgan, what has God been teaching you as a pastor RCC through COVID world? Gosh, as a pastor, I mean, there's probably a couple different pieces that have surfaced for me. I think, it's been not just me as a pastor, but I think for us as elders and thinking through this from a leadership standpoint. One is, there is a sense that the world has changed very fast and no one knows exactly what it's going to look like on the other end. And I don't mean like after everyone's vaccinated and suddenly it's like COVID's not a thing anymore, but it's like there's been a shift. And I think some of what I sense God's inviting, particularly me into, as I've been thinking about it, has been like that he's on the other side of that too. That he's been through, the Dark Ages and the Renaissance and the Great Awakenings and all the uncertainty and dark. Like he's in the midst of what's going on here. And I think some of what I'm trying to discern and get a sense of is how do we continue to move forward as a church in the things that we very much so clear feel God is inviting us into as we become a certain kind of people that honestly can weather anything. COVID, like can weather our own personal trials and sufferings and uncertainties. And so I think what God has kind of been showing me is like, hey, listen, I'm in the midst of COVID, and that felt very true. I mean, we felt sustained. I felt buoyed at time where I was discouraged. But he's on the other side of that. And the second thing is like, I love seeing you all. Like I think it was a family I hadn't seen that came a couple of weeks ago that I hadn't seen face to face, in months. I mean, maybe 7 or 8 months, and it was like long lost friends. It was just really beautiful. And so I think like some of it's just the good longing that it is to see the people that we love, that we long to see, that we long to be like doing more of like life together, even if we're in separate contexts. So yeah, that's probably a couple pieces that have been significant to me in particular. So, all right. Peter Beck, what's your question? Okay, from a pastoral perspective, what have been I'm not wearing my glasses and this is much harder than I think. What have been the biggest impacts of COVID on the spiritual and emotional health of people at RCC? How can and should we pray for and serve one another? Yeah, I think this is probably the part that's been so unique. We've as elders and some leadership folks, we've just been praying for different people throughout our body and kind of checking in on people and seeing how they're doing, emotionally, spiritually, etc. I think a couple of the pieces. How about this? There's not any universal thing. It's not. I don't sense that there's here's the impact, or here's the top 3 impacts. It seems like there is something to the effect around how much work it is to try and connect, like how much effort it is to try and have what was much more natural before. And also, I think one of the other effects has been, I think honestly, is kind of a holding the breath. Like if we can just hang on, if we can just hold our breath for long enough. And I think for some folks that are experiencing some of that spiritual lethargy and kind of that momentum lethargy of what's God doing? Is he doing anything right now in my life, around the world, other than just trying to make it through today? So I think like it's it'd be the wrong, we're not talking like spiritual depression, I don't think, like great author I can't pull up right now wrote about. But I think it's just more kind of a malaise of a certain amount of time. The other thing too, honestly, is I think I think we might be a little gun shy, like emotional health wise. I think where everyone's a little bit weary and beat up and fatigued and I think still a little on edge from all that's unfolded on the political spectrum this last year. I don't think, I mean, certainly in, I've been pastor almost, good grief, it'll be 20 years this year. Like, and I have never known a time like this past year in particular, from a political spectrumization. And I've never known anything like that. So my sense is like, there's a like a fatigue, there's some hangover dynamics, there's some uncertainty, there's some relief on some. I think there's also the sense of like, I don't know who I can necessarily trust. Who's the person? I mean, honestly, this has got to be true for people in our church. Like, we have people on both sides of the aisle. We have people who vote blue, but who vote red. Like, I don't know exactly where the line would break down, but I know we've got, and that's I actually think that's awesome. Like, that's really a healthy church. And but I think in light of how the climate has played out this last year, I think there is some real, like, a little bit of a step back, that the idea of nuance and curiosity and moving towards one another is maybe had to take a step back. So honestly, I think that's probably some of the more spiritual, emotional health piece that I hear in folks is a real fatigue from the combination of COVID and some of the political turmoil and unrest and challenges within families because of that. Extended families, parents and children. I mean, it's been unique in that particular way. So I think that's, there's two things I think to be praying for. One is like, there's a new day dawning in the opportunity for the church, the Church of Jesus Christ, to not be a segmented political animal. Like, I think that's a really important thing, that we not be this place, we actually be this place where we show the world what it looks like to actually love one another most above, belong to a kingdom that's not this world, and then be able to enter into really great conversations of curiosity around things that really matter. Some of them are secondary matters, but they matter. And how we can enter those things effectively together. I think we should be able to show the world how that works. And secondly is just the tangible concern and reality around the fact that that if the primary currency of identity is in anyone in this day, if with the how do I say this? If the word on the street, if you were, is like, the most important thing about you is that you be the truest version of you. Like, I think that's one of the great, that's the identity, right? Identity is now centric. Who I am, I must live out my own identity. I think that's probably, from a world standpoint, like as far as what's going on outside the church, but is slowly seeping into the church because it can't not. I think that's probably the greatest threat from the outside. I think the political thing is the greatest threat from the inside. I think the hyper self-identification, the kind of post-truth thinking, is probably the greatest threat from the outside. That was super philosophical and maybe beyond what you're asking for. But I think those are the threats that they're at play. But the political one feels clearer. The other one feels a little more insipid and a little bit. But they're both real. So anyway, that was maybe more than you had bargained for. But any other questions? My goal is to try and keep this right around 45 minutes. So we are kind of coming up on our end here. If there's anything that you didn't get to ask, or that you had any questions about, like, please, you can email, again, info@roswellchurch.org, or elders@roswellchurch.org. You can always ask us, invite us into any conversations. As we're inviting you to be a part of praying for you, like, it's a privilege and an honor. So thanks for inviting us into the things that are real. And I encourage you to do that with one another in your little pockets of community. People are disconnected right now. So I think that would be really, really meaningful. So thank you for being a part of Roswell Community Church. It's an honor and a blessing to be able to be your pastor, to be able to listen to God with you and with the other leaders, and to follow after him. So thank you for being not only supporters, but people who are seeking to live out this kind of life through the ups and the downs. And we totally get that. and to grow your families, to love your people. So anyway, just want you to know, like you're loved. Like that's not a line. Like that's actually true. Like, you're loved, and you're loved by us, loved by God, and really hopeful that we get to be able to have more opportunity to be together more soon. So y'all have a wonderful night, and again, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.